In the 1990s, Christmas Day on the West Coast had its own distinct rhythm, a kind of sun-drenched holiday attitude that felt entirely different from the classic snow-covered scenes splashed across greeting cards and department store windows. It was laid back, sun-warmed, and unmistakably SoCal, or NorCal, or the Pacific Northwest, depending on where you were. It blended mall glitter and plastic poinsettias with the scratchy hum of VHS tapes, the scent of pine-scented candles wafting through open-screen doors, and the unmistakable aroma of leftover tamales, pozole, or pot roast lingering in the kitchen. While much of the rest of the country was shoveling snow and layering thermal underwear beneath puffer jackets, families out west were more likely to be throwing Christmas tri-tip on the grill in 65-degree weather. Palm trees stood tall, wrapped in strands of multicolored lights that blinked lazily in the afternoon sun. Kids zipped around on brand-new Razor scooters or rollerblades, cruising down wide suburban cul-de-sacs, still littered with torn wrapping paper, plastic packaging, and the occasional forgotten gift tag stuck to the sidewalk. For kids who were born in the late 1980s or early 90s, Christmas morning had a predictable but perfect ritual. It started before the sun came up, when the excitement was too much to bear, and sleep was no longer an option. Pajamas were usually fleece, adorned with cartoons or dinosaurs or glittery snowflakes, and bare feet padded across linoleum floors straight to the glowing living room. There, beneath an over-decorated tree strung with popcorn garlands, blinking lights, and hand-painted ornaments from school art projects, sat the Holy Grail, a mountain of presents. Glossy Toys R Us catalogs had been circled weeks earlier with thick markers, and now those circled dreams were coming to life. Kids tore through the paper, throwing bows over their shoulders, unwrapping plastic action figures, Polly Pockets with tiny accessories that immediately got lost in the carpet, super soakers that would get tested before noon, and if your parents had survived the retail battle royale of 1996, maybe, just maybe, you scored a Tickle Me Elmo. On the West Coast, where snow was more of a myth than a reality for most, the presents reflected the lifestyle. Surfboards leaned against the walls. New rollerblades or skateboards waited on the patio. Sand toys were as likely to appear under the tree as sleds, and no one gave a second thought to the fact that their Christmas morning haul included SPF 30 or a new beach towel. The soundtrack to a 90s Christmas was just as memorable. Somewhere, inevitably, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You was blasting from a stereo or a car radio, courtesy of her now iconic 1994 Merry Christmas album. Mannheim Steamrollers' futuristic, synth-heavy renditions of Christmas classics played on boomboxes or the family stereo system, their electronic flourishes turning traditional carols into something closer to a laser show at the Griffith Observatory. The Home Alone score became background ambiance as families watched Kevin McAllister once again fend off the wet bandits with paint cans, tarantulas, and homemade traps, all while scarfing down cinnamon rolls. On local stations up and down the coast, reruns of animated specials became annual traditions. A Charlie Brown Christmas brought quiet melancholy. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer delivered that stop-motion magic, and the airwaves were filled with whatever ABC, NBC, or Fox had managed to stuff into their holiday programming. For many, the day wasn't complete without a few hours of cartoons and specials that had become as familiar as the family ornaments pulled from the attic each year. The TV lineup was pure 90s gold. Hey Arnold, with its urban holiday charm, Recess showcasing schoolyard chaos even during the holidays, Doug bringing that soft-spoken nostalgia, and for older siblings or cool cousins, maybe a holiday-themed episode of The X-Files or Buffy the Vampire Slayer added a little teen drama to the mix. And then there was the California Raisins Claymation Christmas, an oddball, clay-animated fever dream that somehow wormed its way into the collective memory of an entire generation. People genuinely loved it. It was weird and wonderful, the kind of special that felt like a secret handshake among 90s kids. Food traditions during a West Coast Christmas in the 1990s varied wildly, shaped by the region's immense cultural diversity and deep-rooted immigrant influences. From bustling cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco to smaller coastal towns and inland suburbs, you could count on one thing: fusion cuisine was always present in some form. Holiday tables weren't confined to the traditional turkey and mashed potatoes setup you'd see in a Norman Rockwell painting. Instead, they were a colorful mashup of family histories, culinary experimentation, and whatever looked good at the local grocery store. In Mexican-American households, tamales were more than just a dish. They were a ritual. Entire families would gather in kitchens to form assembly lines, filling corn husks with red chili pork or sweet pineapple masa, all while laughing, gossiping, and blasting holiday music in Spanglish. Filipino families often brought lumpia to the table, golden, crispy spring rolls stacked high next to trays of pancit or adobo. Some tables showcased honey-glazed hams as the centerpiece, while others featured fresh sushi platters from the neighborhood Japanese market, still cold from the fridge and arranged with delicate precision. Vegan casseroles might sit next to deep-fried turkey legs, depending on who brought what. And somewhere in the mix, often toward the end of the table, was a green salad, usually store-bought, with cherry tomatoes and shredded cheese, still wrapped tightly in plastic and forgotten until someone asked if there was anything light to eat. It was this unpredictable, inclusive, and sometimes chaotic blend that made West Coast Christmas dinners so memorable. They weren't about formality. They were about flavor, community, and making it work with whatever traditions and leftovers were available. And then there were the commercials, those gloriously corny, heartstring-tugging, 30-second blasts of holiday sentiment that lodged themselves deep into the childhood psyche. How could anyone forget them? Watching a string of 90s Christmas ads today feels like opening a time capsule made of neon, jingle bells, and soft focus cinematography. There were the iconic Coca-Cola polar bears sliding across animated ice floes and sipping bottles of soda under the northern lights, their glowing eyes and soft grins practically synonymous with the season. There was the Campbell soup commercial that aired every year without fail, featuring a snowman who melted into a smiling boy once he took a sip of chicken noodle soup. A metaphor so simple and powerful that it didn't need updating for decades. And then came the Folgers ad, the one with the prodigal son arriving home at dawn, surprising his family as the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the house. These ads didn't just sell products. They sold an entire feeling, a mood, a vision of what Christmas was supposed to feel like. On the West Coast, kids watched them between reruns of The Simpsons, Hey Arnold, or Full House, or while impatiently waiting for the Santa Claus to start its annual run. The glow from the TV mixed with the soft twinkle of string lights, sometimes shaped like chili peppers, snowflakes, or surfboards, and the result was a kind of cozy magic unique to this place and time. Those lights might be tangled, half burned out, and inexplicably taped to a stucco wall, but to a kid in 1996, they were as good as anything at Disneyland. Gifts weren't just about getting new stuff. They were about having stories to tell, proof that something amazing had happened while you were on break. Toys in the 90s had this larger-than-life quality to them. The Fisher-Price Grand Dollhouse, with its working doorbell and plastic family, was more than just a playset. It was the anchor of an entire imaginary world that could stretch across the living room carpet. Nintendo 64 consoles were the holy grail, often requiring months of begging, deals struck with Santa, and parents who were willing to line up outside of Circuit City before dawn. When you tore that wrapping paper off and saw the unmistakable gray controller with the trident grip, it was game over. In the best way. Barbie minivans came with every pink accessory imaginable and hinted at grown-up freedom, while remote control cars flew down driveways and into gutters within minutes of being unboxed. But what really made the gifts special wasn't just the stuff, it was what came after. As soon as school started back up in January, the playground turned into a showroom. Kids showed off their new Tamagotchis, carefully describing how many times it had pooped before it died. They brought in their new Pogs, Gigapets, Lego sets, or those tiny light-up sneakers they'd worn every single day since Christmas. The show and tell wasn't official, but it was intense. Everyone wanted to prove that their holiday had been epic, that they had gotten the coolest loot, and that Santa or someone had really come through. It was competition, it was camaraderie, and it was absolutely unforgettable. There were plenty of West Coast-specific Christmas memories that gave the season its own unmistakable flavor. Every year, without fail, Disneyland's Holiday Parade aired on television, a tradition that felt just as essential as stockings or hot cocoa. Seeing Sleeping Beauty's castle lit up with twinkling lights, snow falling, artificially of course, over Main Street, and Mickey waving from a massive float was as close to magic as a broadcast could get. But if you were one of the lucky kids whose parents actually took you to the park during the holidays, it was more than just magical. It was the ultimate Christmas brag. Nothing topped walking through the gates of Disneyland in December, bundled up in a hoodie instead of a parka, holding a churro in one hand and a souvenir light-up necklace in the other, while Christmas music piped in from hidden speakers and cast members wore Santa hats with mouse ears. In bigger cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco, the season came alive with spectacle and scale. Enormous tree lighting ceremonies drew huge crowds downtown, with live performances, fireworks, and sometimes even celebrity appearances. Union Square in San Francisco would fill with shoppers skating awkwardly around a temporary ice rink, framed by towering buildings and the glittering holiday tree. Down south, Los Angeles did its own version of winter, with festive lights strung through palm trees, snow machines blasting out short-lived flurries at outdoor malls, and Christmas concerts staged in amphitheaters under open skies. But the true spirit of West Coast Christmas often lived in its smaller towns. From Bellingham, Washington, with its cozy, foggy waterfront celebrations, to Bakersfield, California, where the holiday cheer was just as loud and proud, local communities threw their own spin on festivities. It wasn't uncommon to find holiday parades with kids from the local high school marching band playing off-key versions of Jingle Bell Rock, or makeshift hayrides through suburban neighborhoods with Christmas lights blinking from every lawn. Chili cook-offs doubled as family reunions. Caroling happened whether people wanted it or not, and there was almost always some poor soul in a faded Santa suit, usually a local dad, fireman, or volunteer, waving from the back of a fire truck, red-faced and sweating in the unseasonable warmth. At the heart of it all, though, was a certain kind of wide-eyed wonder that's hard to put into words and even harder to recreate in the present day. Back in the 90s, Christmas wasn't curated. There were no perfectly posed Instagram photos with matching pajama sets, no Amazon Prime Rush deliveries 2 days before the 25th, no LED-synced home displays linked to smartphone apps. The decorations were simple but meaningful. Paper snowflakes taped to fogged-up windows, tangled strings of multicolored bulbs draped over eaves, and Christmas cards taped to the fridge or pinned to corkboards. Ornaments weren't designer. They were made of popsicle sticks and glue, macaroni painted gold, or old family keepsakes wrapped in tissue paper and hung carefully year after year. There was a slower rhythm to everything. Stores closed early, TV marathons ran for hours, and families stayed home together instead of chasing perfect photo ops. You could hear the same scratched cassette of holiday songs playing on a loop in the background while someone baked sugar cookies in the kitchen. And yes, there was a very good chance you'd find a half-eaten candy cane buried in the couch cushions by the time New Year's rolled around. A sticky little relic of the week when time stood still and the rules relaxed. For anyone who grew up on the West Coast during the 1990s, Christmas wasn't just a date on the calendar or a holiday to be observed. It was a full-body, immersive experience that lived in the small details and the in-between moments. It was a stretch of days that felt suspended in time, when the air smelled like cinnamon and citrus, when the sky turned pink at sunset, and when everything seemed touched with a little extra magic. Whether it was watching a Garfield Christmas VHS for the 20th time, or opening a gift to find a battery-operated Yoda that barely worked but felt like treasure, those moments had weight. They had color. They mattered in ways that only childhood memories can. And that's what made Christmas on the 90s West Coast unforgettable.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 199X, we're here just for you, for you.